Nahlawi from the Manchester-based Syrian organization Rethink, Rebuild. Natalia Naranitskaya, what do you read as being Russia's purpose in bombing right now? Why not before now? And what is the ambition now?
Well, personally, I regret that it hasn't been done before the situation with ISIL became so aggravating and threatening the whole world. I see the purpose as such. Russia wants to reinforce the Syrian army, which we take as the only legitimate party in the conflict, with such arms as aviation, which the Syrian army lacks. And also, I've heard by the experts, but not by the officials, of course, I emphasize that it would be also wise to reinforce the Kurds army, because it's rather effective, but not fully equipped and organized. The purpose is to at least to weaken the ISIL to the point that it cannot expand anymore. And that would give the Syrian government the chance to talk to the opposition, because we have been never against such negotiations. And we also think, and I think Russian government and leadership believes that this engagement and this action on the part of Russia will promote and induce and encourage Americans to return to the working relations with Russia, which is only to the benefit of the situation, not only.
Let me interrupt you there. Thank you very much. That's a very comprehensive answer. But let me put it to you, Natalia Naranitskaya, Yasmine Nahlawi. Let me put it to you that what we have here, therefore, is Russia saying, we're here to defeat ISIL. That's what you want too.
Well, first of all, I have to say that I'm very disappointed in what I just heard. She just described Assad as the only legitimate party in the Syrian conflict. She's talking about someone who is responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity. And from another premise, I have to say, to say that going after Assad or going after ISIS is going after terrorism is forgetting that Assad is actually responsible for this very terrorism. Assad is responsible for the root cause of the conflict. If you take the total number of deaths in Syria over the past 4 years, the Assad regime has been responsible for over 95% of the deaths. So when we're talking about how do we alleviate the conflict in Syria, how do we alleviate radicalism and terrorism, we have to remember that the Assad regime is the #1 terrorist group inside Syria operating right now. So as Syrians, the way we see moving forward is without a no-fly zone, which protects people from the brutality of the Assad regime, which protects us from airstrikes, from barrel bombs, from chemical weapons that are employed against the Assad regime, then we don't see a way forward.
Let me put that to Natalia Naranitskaya, because, I mean, it is beyond question that we have in President Assad somebody who has killed enormous numbers of his own people. Is Russia really happy to back that situation?
President Assad offered the negotiations with the opposition before opposition went to the streets, because Assad understood very well after Libya that he will be the next, because the strategy of the West was clear, to crush the pillar states of the Middle East. But I must tell you that the data shows that the atrocities of militants on the occupied territories have outdone 1,000 times all the sins of Assad regime. And, you know, of course, the Assad regime, absolutely, we are not idolizing it at all. And we understand that it was an authoritarian regime. But spoiling the image of oneself by acts against opposition, etc., it doesn't shrink the sovereignty, and this is legitimate government.
Natalia, let me just put that.
We are in diplomatic relations with Syria.
Let me just put that.
Is occupying place in the General Assembly, and nobody contests that. It's only some
but let
Western
me put what you've said to our Syrian opposition activist, Yasmine Nahlawi. you answer those points.
Yeah, well, first of all, she made the point that the opposition groups are killing many times more than the Assad regime, and I'd just like to dispute that factual point that the Assad regime, according to the Syrian Network on Human Rights, the Assad regime is responsible for over 95% of the deaths in Syria. Now, I want to also make one thing clear, that as Syrians, we absolutely condemn ISIS and everything to do with ISIS. And ISIS is a foreign ideology, and there is no one who would like to see ISIS out of Syria more than we do. But at the same time, we recognize that ISIS is not going to go unless we address the underlying root cause of the problem, which is the Assad regime. President Assad, or the Assad regime, in terrorizing, in destroying, in attacking his people, has created the conditions for groups such as ISIS to take hold in Syria. And even if the Americans,
Yasmine,
the Russians, sorry, just as a one final point, even if they were successful between today and tomorrow to eliminate ISIS, the conditions on the ground because of the Assad regime means that we'll have another ISIS in Syria from the next
Yasmine
day.
Nahlawi, I must end it there, but thank you very much for joining us. And Natalia Nahlawi, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Moscow. Well, one of the concerns of the Russian offensive is that it will prompt a new wave of bombed and displaced people to attempt the perilous journey to Europe. Germany has become a magnet for hundreds of thousands of Syrians since declaring that refugees were welcome, but her attitudes now